Thank you. E te atua whakatūwheretia mai e koe ki a mātou e tēnei hui nā huari o te tika, o te oro, o te pono, o te maramatanga o nā mātou. Koe ki a whakamoimiti e whakakroria ki te ingoa tapu. Amen.
Amen. I don't have any apologies nor declarations of interest. We move straight to the confirmation of the non-confidential minutes of the 7th of March. Do I have a mover? Second. Put that to the table. All in agreement? Say aye. Thank you. Has anyone had a look at the any matters arising from the minutes?
Yes, Chair. I just want to know if there's any progress on the presentation that Dougal Hamilton did to us about the carbon. Yeah, so you know, I thought it was a really good presentation, and there's a lot of benefits that could arise from that. And I hope to think that there's some conversation happening behind the scenes with staff and Dougal, and some ongoing collaboration.
Through the chair, it was asked for staff to follow up. I'll have to, the staff member isn't here at the moment, so I'll have to check up with them and get back to you. I'll email back about that, okay?
Good morning, everybody. My name's Alan Jorian, and I'm very passionate about Gisborne and try to do well with a few letters in the paper, and it's the first time I'm coming to actually see the council. But it's the issue that I'm thinking about is because it looks like we're going to have a Mataitai Reserve out here, which is a multicultural, food gathering area. And a Mataitai involves customary Maori, the public, charter people, tourism and everybody. And this is planned for along the Kaiti beach here, Tuhini Point, through to Wainui, and then a bit of a gap, Makarori Beach, to the headland there, but no further. Then there's a gap for commercial up towards a marine reserve and onwards. Now, I've been asked to be involved with the Mataitai, and I gather it's the first Pākehā that's in New Zealand who's involved by this, because I've been very passionate about fishing and things like that, and an enjoyment that's includes a lot of people in this province. Now, if that happens, something crossed my mind. I'm only bringing it up, but because we're going to have our water tested for methamphetamine and things like that anyway, and it's not costing the council anything, why not test the water around the outfall pipe by the same people or whatever, if you feel worth doing, to see if the seafood and the flounders and the mussels are suitable for human consumption. So it's only a matter of testing the water to see that, you know. And, I just, would like to, I know the issue's been going on for a long time, and I've been quite friendly with Meredith Akahata-Brown. And she said, yeah, well, go to the council meeting and tell what you feel. And, and consultation with the public is very important, and Shannon Dowsing's been helpful, with issues around the ramp and Kaiti Beach and things like that, you know, and that's another issue. But, you know, we do have a problem with the launching areas and things like that. But if a mataita is done here, it's a big thing for Gisborne, because this is the place that really needs it. Commercial have had a free-for-all, taking undersized crayfish all these years, and we can't beat them. And at the Rock Lobster Management Group meeting, which is the customary sector, is by the board that I'm on with the Recreational Fishing Council, a statutory body that represents all New Zealand, unless they don't want to be. And, you know, there are other organisations like Legacy and all that, but they don't have that right that we have, representing the public at the Rock Lobster Management Group. And there, the problem is that it's done by consensus. In the past, I shouldn't name people, but the representative for Customary Maori from Gisborne owned quota. So he voted for commercial. So we could never win. And I've been battling this for 20 years. And the solution is a mataita, which excludes commercial. So, you know, if we're going to collect our seafood handy to wherever we can launch a boat, it needs to be pretty safe, you know. And I have heard that we've had typhoid here in the past with when the sewage system wasn't semi-treated, which what goes in. And Terry Sheldrake said in the paper the other day that 50,000 metric meters goes into the sea every year. It's a hell of a lot of semi-treated water. I tried to put a letter in the Gisborne Herald, but Jeremy Muir said that you're 10 years too late, the water's perfectly okay. So I guess he was protecting costs, you know. So I thought this is the thing to do, to come to see you and just let you know, is it worth considering to have it tested? Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Do you know that we do have we've got a great deal of testing that has been done of the water around our fall. Do you know where to access that information? Because we can make that available to you.
Well, Jeremy sent me a few email links, which I didn't bother looking up because I was, you know, the letter was sitting there for a couple of weeks and wasn't turning up. So I inquired a bit about it and he said, oh, you're 10 years too late. So maybe if it's been tested, you know, do you know the results of it?
Yes, I certainly do. We've had those results through this committee a number of times. The problem is that at the moment we don't. Well, I'm not meant to make statements in this forum. I would question whether the results now are specific to whether the health of the seafood is suitable for eating. The results may indicate water quality, but don't necessarily indicate the quality of the food that you would be gathering. So two different issues.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'll just leave it with you, and thanks for the opportunity to have a chat and meet the people. And I know their names, I'm not so sure about the faces, but I know this fella from the crayfish meetings. He's a good man. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Te Māori ora. Ngā mihi tuatai kia koe, pere mo tō karakia kia tātou. Ngā mihi hoki i te tiamana, Mr. Bill, me Dean, me aku rangatira hoki. Kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you for hearing us. I have Sons introduce themselves.
How's it? I'm Manawa, and I'm here to support my dad today.
I'm Kahu and I'm here to also support my dad.
So yeah, these are two of the technical advisory group, and as you said, Bill, this morning, they're here to keep me on my toes. Yeah, so it's really a pleasure. Firstly, yeah, I'd like to acknowledge, so this is a brief update on the Modi Compass project, and we are at the moment. First slide there is quite key. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So like this whole wastewater journey, it's a long and tenuous one, and the same with this project. It's about the people. So with that, acknowledge the people that have been involved, the toil of the rangatahi and rangatira, past and present. Te Karate Area School, Campion College, Gisborne Boys High, Paukahu, Te Runanga Tūranganui Kiwa, Gisborne District Council, Ministry for the Environment, Kiwa Group, Te Wai Māori Trust and Tautanga Mahagi Trust. Those are some of the groups that have been helping along the way. Also, I'd like to acknowledge Uncle Stan Paro and also Uncle John Ruru, his 81st birthday today. So like my uncles, they still keep a very keen interest in this, this journey, as much as they did when they were involved in it, when they were at the table. Okay, so a background with reference to the Wastewater Management Committee's terms of references to the Modi Compass is underpinned by, or fits within these terms of reference, to identify research, monitoring and planning projects to improve the Modi and water quality of Tūranganui Kiwa. Part of that subgroup, Kiwa Group, is within the develop and administer the Tūranganui Kiwa Water Quality Enhancement Project, which we now call the Kiwa Group. So there's a project timeline starting back when well, Dad and I were formulating it. So intellectual property has been asked about the Modi Compass, and basically was my father Bill's. And through him, and he saw education and training be the way forward, so he can educate rangatahi like his grandchildren. Yeah, so but technically within the GDC, Tūranganui Kiwa context, we've been through the development phase, trial phase with a number of pilot projects. One of them was at Wharepunga Marae a couple of years ago, and now we're into the implementation and training. So the idea is that we hand the tool over and it becomes, and to be independently used by the council with a bit of training. Just in a wider context, I think, yeah, the Gisborne region is at the forefront of the importance of Modi, but in the wider context, Modi must be restored to waterways subjected to pollution and practices that have compromised the relationship that Māori have traditionally had with these taonga. That came out of a cabinet paper that's embedded inside that particular document by the Ministry for the Environment and the Ministry for Primary Industries last year. Also with the context of the GDC, we have the National Policy Statement for Fresh Water, and again in that, my tauranga Māori is a must do as far as monitoring goes. And there's two areas that I'm involved with, and the Modi Compass tool is high on the radar within both the National Science Challenge for Sustainable Seas and Te Wai Māori. Te Wai Māori is a statutory body that was born out of the Māori Fisheries Act 2004. And 2 years ago, they invested in a assessment of the Māori of the Waipawa River, which detailed in the newspaper clipping there was a repeat of a baseline study we conducted 10 years ago. Just as a refresher, on the left, there's our, the Modi Compass dashboard, and the ideal thing with a tool that is going to be used is that it's easy to understand, repeatable, reliable, and valid. So the dashboard is sort of the key point. It's summarised a whole lot of complicated and extensive questions and queries beneath it, but it culminates in a dashboard that identifies the 12 attributes around the outside. Those 12 attributes define what mode is for a water body. The orange attributes there are the realm of Tane, which would be people, so Toitu te Marae o Tane, Toitu te Marae o Tangaroa Toitu te Iwi. So that's a whakatauki, so protect and strengthen the realms of land, protect and strengthen the realms of water, and only then will the people flourish. So that's at the essence, that's at the heart, the pito of the Māori Compass talk. Okay, so how do we assess this and how is it standardised so that it can be used in different places by different users? So parts of the, so I haven't got time to go through every single attribute, so I'll just pick on, in this case, the biohazards attribute, which is at 6 o'clock on the compass. So within each of those main attributes, there are a number of fine scale attributes that feed into that. So for biohazards, there's the fine scale attribute of E. coli. So I'm looking along the bottom row there. E. coli, and that's sourced from LAWA, which is the Land, Air, Water, Aotearoa data. 16 regional councils feed their monitoring data into that particular database, and then they work their magic. They come out with these results or snapshots over time. So yeah, GEC inputs does the testing for the E. coli, and there's a site there, a LAWA site, which is near Tare Pa. Can't quite remember the name of the road. And then there's assessment summary. So there's millions for the E. coli, numbers per 100 mil, and there's also a state. So if you could see on the side there, they have bell curves, and that particular site is in the worst 25% for like states within the country. So therefore, it's given an attribute state of E, which is very poor. So if we have a look at the Māori Compass dashboard, you can look at biohazards at 6 o'clock, you look straight up and you see it's given an E. So it's very poor. Ideally, we want to see A segments right for each of those particular attributes. That's the ideal state. So that's one way of it. It's one example of how you can feed in data that is standardised around the country into the tool. Next one, Tauranga Māori. Integration with Tauranga Māori. Okay, so for this one, we were looking at example. So the bottom left-hand corner is a screenshot of the online app or online database. Has a series of questions that you go through to build up a picture of those particular A, B, C, D, E attributes. So I just chose that one there, screenshot. Tangata whenua, use a water body to provide fish or hui or tangi. So you go, ideally have a noho marae, sit with the tangata whenua, and then you record it all about these particular topics. So then you'd ask, the question would be asked, how often do you go to the river and provide fish for hui or tangi? And it ranges between, it's a Likert scale, so you have never, really, sometimes, very often, or always. And thereby giving you a value on the side there, metric. Fortunately, for the local examples that we have, it's very, very rarely that we put tuna on the table for tautanga mahaki anyway. Unfortunately, so that's our goal, is to put fish back in the rivers that we can put back on the table. That's our goal. And that would light up the mahinga kai, which is at 3 o'clock, that attribute there. So that's sitting in an E because we never will be really different cases. And that again relates across, so it's an interrelationship of these attributes. So then from the mahinga kai, you can then shoot across to 9 o'clock, and eel abundance, well, eel abundance must be very low if you can't put it on the table. So all these interconnections, you can start drawing that complicated picture, but start seeing it in sort of a clearer way and identify the compass part as it's a navigational tool, so you can look and see the different parts of it that you need to put resources into, or knowledge into. Oh, the right there, it's all about, the next generation coming through. It's all about education. So it's okay having experts doing this for us, but eventually about tino rangatiratanga, it's about local people with local solutions for our local problems. So every Friday we have a education course. We have a Tikaraka area school, Gisborne Boys High and Campion, and we take them through, we teach them how the compass works, all the methodology, understanding the histories, if you've done the Tupapa Trail, etc. So that all becomes an durable method, transferring the knowledge on how the compass works, but actually it's all about the people and how they make it work. The last or the next steps. Okay, so we'll just do a quick demonstration of the boys here. They're quite happy to get a few hours of school, so I'm going to put them to work in case the teachers are watching. So the idea of standardised, now this is like a, yeah, so standardise, what we mean by standardise, was the setting, finding a number of eels in a area. We use this type of net, Dutch type net, and we also use it unbaited, so we don't need to bait. Does anybody know what this is? That's part of that standardisation. Ronald used a special bait, and I use a different type of bait, and the bait can influence the attraction of the nets. But if we both put our nets in different places, we both don't use enough bait, and it's a fair indication. That's part of the thinking behind it, having standard methods. We set it perpendicular to the stream, and we set it overnight, so we set this tonight at Canterbury Bridge. We'll get up tomorrow morning when the kids come to Tikaraka, catch, count, measure away, put it in the database, and we can get a picture of what's going on. Okay, so we get eel abundance. We're also, importantly, is the scientific data we're collecting, but it's also about that connection with the kids with our reconnecting. Part of those attributes can only be increased if our people are back there gaining that mātauranga. Quite a key point. That's another essential part of the tool.
Thank you. As Bill said, I'm fully in support of this project. It's an amazing tool. I want to know if you have met Natalie and Steve Whitaker yet, who are working on impact projects in this region? No? Seems like a no. So Natalie and Steve were the founders of Give a Little. They're now working in Tairāwhiti to start a new venture called Toha, and that is to provide access to impact capital markets for projects of significance like this. So they may be able to support you in actually working out how to standardise this, receive capital from venture capitalist markets and apply it to impact projects like what you're doing here. Oh, right. So I can give you an introduction.
Much appreciated.
Any further questions?
Mine's not necessarily a question, not necessarily related to finance. I don't sort of see that as one of our barriers. I do stress that there is a systems approach that I don't think council are truly behind what Ian has been doing. Council have been a supporter right back at the original days. I sometimes don't feel that the Māori compass perhaps perforates through a number of issues that council do. And we'll come up to an example later when we go through the local and international studies that have been presented about AUD. And I've been on this committee for too long, and suddenly I'm seeing reports that were present 2 or 3 years ago being presented today. And I also wonder why Ian's work is not included in some. I wonder how far Ian's work is included in the body of work that council. That's just the point. Thank you.
Let Penny, given that both the CEO and the Deputy CEO are here, I'll defer to them to answer that question.
Discuss that when we get to that paper.
Aye.
Should we discuss that when we get to that paper?
Well, that's all right. Wait. Yep. Any further questions? I mean, when you look at the list of schools and the groups and trusts, it's a pretty creditable support group. And from my general listening, the moral compass is pretty well received around the country by most councils and iwi organisations. Just by coincidence, I was in discussion with one of the attendees of the Leaders Forum, and he happened to mention it, so there's credibility there. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you. Do you think you can?
Yeah, I'll move. I just have a few comments actually, and the key word is perception. You know, the perception of wastewater. Where do you draw the line between the perception that is contaminated water and the perception that it's not? Because all the transformation that this water goes through, and you see international studies and everywhere, a lot of other people in areas who have got water supply shortage are using wastewater transformed into usable water. Now, the perception that it's wastewater overrides and overrules most of the countries that have a reasonable supply of alternative water at the moment. But, you know, with global or climate change and all the things that are coming upon us, and all these countries having to readapt their perception of a water supply, you know, it's a really grey area. And, you know, there's been resistance. Oh, we can't have wastewater on our, you know, recycled wastewater on our crops and everything. And all these other countries around the world who have water shortage problems are using it. They're exporting the products from it. And you just think there's got to be some conclusion when the perception of wastewater, recyclable wastewater, is okay to use. And I would believe that perception changes as the demand grows. So, you know, that keyword perception is such a, it's got a lot of connotations. And I would think that if we had a drought this year, that perception would change dramatically. But this paper is awesome. It actually does identify a lot of, you know, what other regions, other countries are using, and yeah, it's very valuable information.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Any other comment? Yes.
Yes, thank you. I agree. I really appreciated the report. What it does highlight is that perception change depending on requirements, and I think what we've seen from a number of these reports is in places where they've just run out of water, that does a full 180-degree change in perception, that what wasn't acceptable suddenly becomes acceptable. And I appreciate that it's a conversation that iwi will continue to kick around for a while yet, but I guess it's the choice of whether we're having the waste going up to the sea or being dealt with through land-based applications. I think with the work that the Activate Tied Up with you have done and the Chamber of Commerce, there's a growing appetite to at least explore what our options are around the utilisation of recycled water. I mean, I think there's a point where we're going to stop calling it wastewater and actually, and that's all part of the perception. I mean, there's a perception now that the water we're currently drinking is good. You know, it's just a perception because we've been told it's okay. So I think it's about just changing the way we're looking at this, and part of the alternative use and disposal project is got to be looking at not necessarily specifically at changing the perception, but just changing our references to being recycled water as opposed to wastewater.
Thank you for the pun, by the way, the growing appetite. I like that. First of all, great paper. I really enjoyed the information on what's happening nationally. It was very interesting. A couple of points that I thought were more important than perhaps perception, or it's related to perception actually, is that we need to change the perception that we have water, because we do not. The fact is that the Makoti Aquifer is oversubscribed by 2/3, and we need to, and we do not have a solution yet. Whilst there is a recharge trial in place, that is still oversubscribed. There is still no water available. We are in a state already where this has huge value. So if the trial is not a success, we won't be looking at this as an option. We will be looking at it as a solution, because currently we've the only other option we've got is to pump river water into our perfectly pure aquifer, right? So there's challenges with both, and I would argue that this water is potentially better than the river water that we're considering using. So my perception on this is completely different to what's possibly being presented at the moment. The other part, I was a bit concerned when I saw that the Chamber produced their own report by Activate without us being involved. But then I was very glad to see that some of the members of the committee and staff were involved in that process, because I hadn't been aware that was going on in parallel. But I think it does identify that we need to be a little bit closer with our partners in region and work together, because we've obviously put funding in place to do this. And if we can pull those pots, then as Ian said, if you want to go far, go far. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So we should be grouping together to solve this problem. And finally, the overwhelming amount of information on what other countries is doing was very good, but and showed a lot of trends that you could follow. But I think without being able to go into it further in our context, it was difficult to consume what we would take out of that and be able to apply here. But worthwhile information nonetheless. But thank you.
Chair, does that mean the report is open for discussion now? Yep. I think we were waiting for this report to take place. And as I said, some of those articles that we used predate us for quite a long time. And I'm just surprised at them coming forward now. But I do think that we're well past the perception stage. I think in the last 6 months, stuff has happened that we're well past wondering whether we should or we shouldn't. And I think the stock take that's been provided, the work that's been done in councils in New Zealand and international work, I think the idea behind that is just to show the appetite of what is there. And I haven't bothered getting into the depth of the detail, because I do know what we will hope to have here will be quite specific to what we have. But what we should read into all of that is that everybody is doing something. And if we don't, we're in the wrong business. Regardless of whether the aquifer is being recharged or not, is the body of work that should be done. To me, this report is just, we should be doing the wastewater one first and then this one. Being on WTAG for a long time, I've seen a lot of wonderful ideas, and I've had them disappear on us at the last minute. So the thing I think is missing in this report is the consultation with Tangata Whenua. It's just been chucked at us quickly. And Tangata Whenua have agreed that if it has to be done, then the person that's been approached is the one to get it done. So we were all happy to participate and see it being done. But I'm not optimistic. We were here when we talked to, I think it was Activate, as opposed to ECT, about the stakeholder engagement. And to me, that stakeholder engagement is not the level that WMC is worrying about, that needs to worry about. I think that the stakeholder engagement that Activate will do is what council needs to make sure that all the people get over the line. And WMC is not here to change the minds of voters. It's here to see that the best possible proposal is presented to work with our wastewater. To that effect, as I said, that meeting was a long time ago with Activate, and we haven't had anything come back from Mr. Breed, the person who has heaps of resources to start spending, to tell us what his overall stakeholder engagement will be like. And to me, if you looked at a lot of those international examples, and even the examples in New Zealand, the research that has been done has not gone deep enough. It hasn't shown the vehicles that were used to bring about those projects and schemes. In New Zealand, as an example, the Ashburton one, the Hines one, Tangata Whenua, the local hapu, are on that water scheme committee plus Ngāi Tahu. And I think I know that the stakeholder engagement that Activate will do won't bring us any closer to a solution of who will be the group behind bringing this AUD forward. And us around the table have always argued that we needed to go straight to a succinct group that would be responsible. If you looked at a lot of those international schemes, you will find that a percentage of them are community type schemes, state schemes, and very particular to certain areas. And I also think that something like that is, we've got to move forward from trying to do what we do in a New Zealand context. And so there's some big arguments of fighting for special set-aside legislation for here to make sure that what we want to happen here will happen for us. I think every body in New Zealand trying to squeeze into the one RMA Act has been a difficulty. And it brings upon us a level of scrutiny that has hindered development in the past. So I think that it's good to look at the stock take. Consultation is good. Overall stakeholder, I think, is to me is in the wrong place. We need to work out who's a ginger group that will move this significantly. A mixture of council, Tangata Whenua, and users. And the other thing I felt the report, maybe we're here in May, and I think our next meeting is not till September, but I might have hoped for a more succinct plan about this box is here, this box is here, and that box is here, and this is where we're heading towards. As Shannon said, the detail of the stock take is quite extensive, somebody needs to read it on our behalf and then present the options going forward.
Councillor Foster's right, it's perception. I have two questions with regard to us here at home, our plant. Even if we got the water to 98% pure, there is still the question amongst Marydon about the paru that comes from the human body. Whether it goes into the ocean or goes on to production areas out there, who makes that decision?
Chair, I think that's why I felt this should have come after the work that's been done to get us compliant with our consent. If you can put those big things into place at that point, we will take iwi along on this journey. You're just presenting iwi with a black and white statement, and that's not fair. And iwi get held up in the paper as if there's only two possibilities, you're either in or out. And iwi are mature and sophisticated enough to travel in the journey and learn all the various things about the level of clarification that this may get to, the level of ultraviolet use, the use of screw presses. These are all things we need to take our people through to show where that water can get to scientifically. Willie, who's doing this work for David, when he did his quick whip around of key Pakeke and that's what they came back and said to him, well, you should show us the scientific benefit of it. So they haven't closed off some preset condition from traditionally what may have been thought. They're willing to look at the science and then make a decision at that time. And it just, if there's one thing you learn from the Modi Compass, is that you have a decision with a number of segments help you get to the appropriate one for tangata whenua, whānau, and hapu and iwi going forward.
I wasn't meaning to be negative or provocative. I was just putting the facts as we have got them in front of us at present. Any further discussion?
Just, sorry, Bill. Yeah, and I think and again, we're speaking a lot about perceptions, but this perception is only some iwi people who object to it. And I'm sure there are some non-iwi who think it's not a great idea, but I mean, I don't know that that's enough to stop the continued investigation of the opportunity, because we're faced with the reality of a shortage of water. The other reality is we've got a whole lot of water that we're pumping up with waste. So I think we just need to continue to pursue it. Yeah, and I mean, the idea that it's 98, can be 98% pure, I think 100% is what the target is. I mean, it's what's 100%, what's 98%. I don't know that the science is probably still out on that. But yeah, I don't think it's just iwi, and it's not all iwi, and we're never going to get 100% of everyone agreeing with it. Equally, it's not going to be compulsory to say you have to use this water. And I think there will be some people who will make a decision commercially or otherwise that this is the right thing to do, and there will be others who will reserve the right to say we don't want to use that water. For me, it's for those of us who do need water, and I'm speaking on behalf of Rongo Whakaata and a number of iwi land blocks. We have no other options. We have nowhere else to go to source water. So for me, I look forward to this coming to a conclusion and getting some water so that we can develop our land and contribute more to the local economy.
Sorry, sir. Mine are probably more administrative than the detail of the reports. So I just note that we've had a change in terms of the management of this group to transformation and relationships. So I'm assuming they'll be at this table from now on?
So if I may, Chair, there's a couple of things I'd like to clarify with this paper and the process that we're in at the moment. When we talk about alternative use and disposal versus the treatment plant upgrade, those two things have to happen in parallel. They're not a choice, they're not one or the other. They have to happen in parallel, and that's within our consent. So the council has dedicated the resource for the alternative use and disposal going forward, and that is something we need to investigate. As part of that, we have had members of our community talk about wanting that resource and talking about it as the committee has already today, that it's a resource that people would like to be able to use, hence why we're investing in trying to do that. Part of going forward internally in council, we've been talking about which parts of us have the resource and are available to be able to progress the alternative use and disposal and progress the wastewater treatment plant. The wastewater treatment plant will be led by Lifelines because we're the engineers and we build stuff, that's what we do. As part of that, looking at resourcing, Keita Kohiri, who's the Director of Transformation and Relationships, is going to be picking up with her team the alternative use and disposal going forward. That's because of the parallels that fits within the spatial plan that we're currently developing, that I know a lot of you have had input into and are aware of what we're doing. So our spatial plan going forward is going to be looking at what land use happens where for Tūranganui. It's also looking at the whole of Tairāwhiti, not just Tūranga, around where we will be using land, what will land be used for, where will people live, grow food, and all of those things. So the alternative use and disposal discussions around irrigation in areas more or less with wastewater or with other water sit within the strategic planning team, because they're the ones who are looking at that future focus and have the resource that are looking for those alternative options going forward. It doesn't mean that Community Lifelines won't be involved. The hub absolutely will, and it will still be reported through to this table. So one of the things we wanted to do is, for those of you that don't know, Keita, she will be sitting here at this table more going forward to be able to talk about these issues and things as they develop through with that team.
So I just want to be clear in terms of who's going to be progressing which part of the work program we have to do as WMC. So I'm sure the water quality stuff will sit with that team.
Sorry, Ron, at water quality as to the...
So as per our terms of reference, we've got a research and monitoring reference there that's being tagged to the Tūranganui Kiwa Water Quality Enhancement Project, which we've tagged to the Kiwa group that Ian has been chairing. So will that work continue under that management?
So Keita, one of the things I know, feel free to jump in, is around looking at how we're delivering the work programs that we have across between her team and ours, and who's got resourcing to assist to make sure that that work is still progressed through this committee, to make sure that the resources are available to make the work program happen better than what it probably has been in the past.
Yep. So, sorry.
Through the chair, I anticipate coming back in September with a bit more clarity around that for the committee to consider. So how you will consider that work program, how we roll that out, the current structure, information as such to support that decision making.
Sorry, through the chair. How it's structured in terms of project management should not impact on what is in your terms of reference or what you're expecting to look at going forward. So this is about internally how we're shuffling ourselves around. So I would ask that the committee doesn't get too caught up in who's doing what from a perspective what you need. What I can give you assurance of is that there will be continuity irrespective of whose hands this work changes over, who leads it. So what we've tried to do is just align and make sure that the right groups are delivering the right projects. So science-based projects are delivered out of Keita's area at the moment. infrastructure, David can focus on the infrastructure and implementation side, etc. So it's really about our internal house rather than the impact that it should have in terms of delivering to the committee.
Cool. I didn't expect anything less, Mr. Chair, but I just want to be clear. When we're tagging work to be done, I know who I'm talking to. So my next question there is on the consultation process that's been delivered. So while some people might have been engaged in their process, I haven't been, which isn't a problem, but I just want to be clear. When you put their terms of reference together, who did you talk to? Right? We have a group called Kiwa who have been tagged to do this type of work for us before. All of a sudden, they're not in the picture. I'm not discrediting the person who's going to be doing this work, but we do have a process in play that seems to be going around.
Through the chair, the process that we've got coming forward, I'm assuming you're talking about, is with Wale Tiaho and working with Tūranga Iwi, Ron? So that process, so for our iwi partners, that was not an exclusive process and it's an inclusive process. So the outline that's been put forward as part of the project plan for there, it was not to exclude anybody from that process at all, and it wasn't to bypass anything that's happened either. It's around getting a resource and to help us to have the information come back around where those aspirations go. So it's looking at something that we don't have resource and capability for at the moment, given where we are. So to be able to go out and have those meetings, talk to all of the hapu and iwi that have been identified in order to make sure that we can get some feedback brought back to this table for consideration for things going forward.
As I've said, I have no problem with the process that's been outlined to be undertaken. My concern is were Kiwa Group consulted on the terms of reference for this? Whether iwi as part of this group consulted, because I wasn't. That's all I'm saying. So I'm happy, as Penny has indicated, for the project and the person identified to go ahead and do it. I just don't want to see this happen again.
Thank you. Two questions through the chair. PGF application submitted May 2019. Has that been done?
Through a chair, it's literally probably in the post right now. Finish it today.
Great. You got to end the play tomorrow, so it's fine. And project plan for mortuary waste, is that, when should we expect that back?
Mr. Chair, before we move on, will we see the application? We've seen a version of it, but we haven't seen anything since.
Through the chair, wasn't aware that the committee wanted to see the final application as it went through. That wasn't something we were tasked to bring back through the committee.
Maybe not, but I'm pretty sure we as iwi made it clear we had some issues with it.
I'm happy to share.
To remind the committee, our position was it should be a joint application, right?
Through the committee, through the chair, I'm happy to share the draft application for what we have and what we've put forward. That's not a problem. So we have gone through and changed what's been in there as requested by the committee.
Well, that'd be good to see. And just on Shannon's last point, Mr. Chair, I think we asked for some clarification around the budget going forward.
The mortuary waste is due to come back in September. So we'd be giving the costs and the project outline for that then.
Through the chair, we intend to bring the project plan to the committee in September, addressing mortuary waste.
Not really. So I think the budget discussion was tabled to be presented today. But if that's where staff are at, that's where they're at.
Kia ora. Yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but I'm just interested to see with the consultation with tangata whenua that we've included hāhi ringatu in there. And I don't have an objection to that as such, but I mean, where do we include other hāhi, or I'm not sure how that has come to be part of the consultation process.
Through the chair, that was part of the suggestion from the person who's undertaking that for us. So the person involved was being brought in for their consultation skills, and they were the person who suggested it.
Chair, if I can just add to that, I think that what has been presented was very preliminary. And I'm pretty sure that it's intended to go wider than the hāhi ringatu. He happened to be there when this was gifted to him, and he talked to the, he was at the rā when he had it, so that's why that name has come through. But he's wanting to be quite inclusive of everybody.
So the purpose of this paper was to update the committee on the progress for where we're at with the construction of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. So this is an outline of the work that we've done to date and the future work that we have sitting in front of us now. We're at the stage of progressing the program to develop it up and also to bring in the contractors and consultants and professional services needed in order to build the treatment plant that we have in front of us. We've already given an advance notice to market, which we already have responses back from. An advance notice to market is telling industry that we are going to be looking for these expertise to help us build this treatment plant, and that we need them to set aside time to be able to start looking at tender documents that will be coming out in the next few months. So what we're doing is starting to whittle down and work through the process so that we'll be able to make appointments for contractors to be able to help us from the design right through to the build and the implementation. So we've started that, and the table on page 122 just kind of outlines some of the things that we have underway at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. I'm talking to the table that's presented on 122. And I'm just, I can see the, I guess, piecemeal staging and stepping out of what is proposed, but I would have thought we'd been able to have looked at an overall picture of what we're trying to aim for. I can't work out in there where the clarification, what the clarification will look like. There's a mention of a screw press. There's a mention of and just the UV design and the dewatering equipment and stuff like that. I thought, this is excellent, but to me, it's still not enough. If you remember, tangata whenua are here to make sure that a lot of these things are physically going to take place and will happen. And I'm not seeing enough to help tangata whenua with the consent variations that council will need to post.
Through the chair, all the work that we've been doing on the wastewater treatment upgrade has been with a view to having bums and seats come July, to have the detailed design engineers appointed and working on the detailed design aspects. Those aspects, as you were talking about in terms of more detail on UV clarification, that level of detail is only apparent once you go into the detailed design phase. So we won't be able to present that until those engineers get going on that work, which is in that table.
Yes, I understand that, but I would have thought that there's a limitation on what we can do on the site anyway, and I I would have thought we would be able to look at is, say in a broad manner, one of these may take place on that site, one of these may take place on that site, and then I'll be able to judge what the end, what will come out of that pie will be like.
So through the chair, we have got that. We haven't presented that to committee because of the range of different options we're exploring. So staff have been out and looked at different plant and equipment across the country, which has changed some of the initial concept that we had thought about, just given the sheer scale and height. We can bring those back. In September, I'm sure we can bring back a layout of what we're proposing. And a lot of this does come down to the detail and the heights. Things like the hopper, there's a hopper that's there to take away the solids. When we went and had a look at one of those, it was 12 metres high in the air, which presented a whole lot of fall from heights and hazards issues that actually the place that had it didn't want to have either. So it's working back from, if that's that technology that's being tried somewhere else, and then building on our lessons. So a lot of that detail is what we can start post 1 July.
This just bears another question. So this is all like a moving target. As we're as we're going through this process and getting to this particular stage, knowing that there's going to be some other, whether it's wetland or other process afterwards, we'll never know what that's going to be until we know what the quality of the water is coming out of these, with the UV treatment and you know, all the other treatment that this new extension is going to give. So there's a lot of variables in there, and yeah, that's
through the chair. We do know what the quality of water is going to be coming out the end. All we're doing now is working out what's the most cost-effective, best way to get to that. We know we can, and the detailed design is about just coupling together different components to make sure we achieve that. But the engineers in the previous phase of this project have determined the water quality will come out post this upgrade.
Thank you. It seems like what we're discussing here is that you have engineering goals that you need to achieve, and you're optioneering now around what engineering option you use to achieve those goals. So it's extraction of solids and UV treatment, et cetera. I'm happy that you've been around and seen other plants and assessed other issues, but absolutely that's something that I'd want to see back at this committee, and understand how we're progressing. This is one of our most significant individual purchases in a long time at council, and I just want to, and it sounds like you've got a very good procurement process in place. Have we got a champion in council who's going to be driving this forward from a project management point and taking ownership of that process?
So through the chair, one of the things we've identified very early on is around our capacity and our capability to deliver this project. So this project will be delivered by Lifelines, and I'll be the project sponsor internally for it. However, we're the first to admit that we don't have the skills and expertise of something this technical to be able to build ourselves. Bringing in a project manager who does stuff like this all day, every day, is an investment we think that is very important to make sure that this project's successful by the end of it. Part of the procurement process you've alluded to is to get the project managers appointed and then bring on our professional services, so our designers and our engineers, who will then work with who's going to build it to make sure we get the right come out of that as possible. So as you say, councillor, it's a very big investment for a single plant, so we're making sure that we bring in the right people to make sure we get it done right.
Thank you, Chair. I think when the terms were put in the original consent, the technology since then has changed considerably. And as tangata whenua, I'm more optimistic about the quality of water that will be produced at that point. If we follow a process that will help understand tangata whenua's concerns, and we don't just try to do a very base job. I think the reason why this one is more important to me as tangata whenua is the quality of the water that will be produced out of the clarification in the UV. The AUD, I wasn't present when that consent was written, but I think in the old days, the AUD was a sop to tangata whenua. It was something that was just offered to bring them alongside. We are now at the point where AUD is a district-wide thing. Everybody wants to be in on it. So that's why I guess I'm retracting back to what that new wastewater plant will do and the quality of what it will produce. Because at that point, you then have a product that will go out in the pipe still, and we still don't want to see that, even though the quality is significantly improved. It will go out in the pipe, or it will turn inland for council, private individuals, or whatever to use. And that's where I separate the two arguments. And what happens at the plant is my priority, and then what happens with AUD is secondary to that. Thank you, Chair.
Any further discussion or questions? If not, would someone move the recommendation? Thank you. Second, I put it to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. 123.
I have a potential conflict in this with the Wilson Street upgrades. They are potentially looking at an engineering solution via my property. Yeah, no community interest, but it's potentially information report only though, so.
Discussion, questions?
We've got a presentation to go with this. We're just waiting for staff to get here.
What's that?
We've got staff coming to give a presentation.
Have we?
Yep.
How far away?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Sure.
Do you want a cup of tea?
Cup of tea.
Presentation after.
Yeah.
Good morning. So as we've said, we've prepared, this has been on the to-do list for a little while now, recognising that without compliance and enforcement, backing up the work that our guys are doing out on the ground and working very, very closely with the homeowners, we don't have a lot of credibility. So now we have prepared a strategy that focuses on voluntary compliance as a key way. So it takes a lot of kind of man hours working with people, but it certainly is best practice. We'll be putting this strategy up in draft form to the Assets and Infrastructure Committee in a couple of weeks' time for them to consider. But we've absolutely, it's hand in glove with the compliance and enforcement approach and what we've termed the infrastructure improvements on private property strategy with all of these parallel projects that Wolf is describing. So working with people for those small fixes, and also Wolf will get to it, the public pipes on private property aspect, which council has put budget into doing through the last LTP project. So again, just to reiterate, if we can't meet our council committed target of reducing the amount of times that we have overflows into the rivers if we don't fix the private property drainage.
Thank you. Awesome, cool. Kia ora, tēnā tātou. Thank you very much for letting us, allowing us this opportunity to talk about, in particular, this awareness and education campaign. And me mihi ka tika ki a koe pene, mo i kupukoro I te ata nei, but I really think that this actually is a super important kaupapa for this committee in particular and all of our committees that are water focused, because ultimately our main focus is to minimise and reduce the amount of wastewater going into our rivers and onto people's private properties. So on that note, I'll just quickly talk about our awareness and education program. Basically, our main focus is to really inform people of Te Rāwhiti about why these discharges are happening and really challenge them into being part of the solution on how we can reduce these this issue rather than contributing to it. So there are loads of different ways that we could have done this, but we've selected these 5 ways. So the first is basically just to update our website because it's a little out of date, and the website's going to be super important because that's where we're going to direct all of our people for more information. Then we've got the 5-part mini-series, which I'll talk a little bit more about after this. We've got a drain art competition, which is about awareness of our 2 systems, the stormwater and our wastewater networks, good news stories, and community events. So our 5-part mini-series is basically, we've got 5 key messages, and like as Wolf said, there's not just one thing that's causing these overflows, right? There's a whole heap of different reasons like inflow, infiltration. So our 5 key messages are going to address those, and each of those 5 key messages also has a call to action. So we want people of the community to be doing something after they've heard each of these messages. I just want to explain a little bit first about this photo that I've put up here. That's something that those are things that our guys have pulled out of our sewage and wastewater system. The thing that all of those are on is actually a towel. You might have seen on Facebook that our Fulton Hogan contractors pulled out 2 towels that blocked our wastewater network a couple of days ago. So these are our 5 key messages, in orange, and then the black are the call to action. So we've got only flush the 3Ps, and that is coming out today at 1 p.m. So soon, hopefully, your guys' Facebook will be overloaded with this key message. We've also got Get to Know Your Gully Trip, and I'm not sure if you guys know Mike Hall from Hall Right Plumbing. He's going to be the face of that key message. So all of these key messages are going to be told by members of our community and a range of different people from our community. We've got sinks are not rubbish bins. That's about blockages again. Rainwater and sewage don't mix. So that's all about our two networks, and when they do mix, we end up in the poo. So, and then lastly, I've been working with Hauora Tairāwhiti about a big health message when wastewater goes into our river. What are the health effects? One, for our environment, and then two, for our people. So each of our 5 key messages is going to have a cool, sharp, funky, snappy 2-minute video. And I'll show you guys our first one soon. And then also we've got 6 billboards going up around the city. So we're going to have billboards of basically that image there, and infographics that we can blow up and put up on walls in schools or in bathrooms, but also shrink down to like A5 size and do a big mail drop box and have it different like info centers around the city as well. So I will just quickly show you our first 2-minute video for our first key message, which is only flush the 3Ps. And this is a guy called Nick Tahiwi, who is from Manutuki. And one of the really cool things too that we've done with this campaign is, just while Heather gets it back to the start of the video, is we've used everything around about this campaign. We've used people from Tairāwhiti, from our video director to all of the people in the videos to our graphic designers. We've all used local talent to produce these. So here's the first video. My job is to maintain the soil by pulling the weeds away. You guys flushed out the water. So, I'm here to give you all some thought to what to flush, what not to flush down the toilet. If we don't change our ways now, how does the living going to happen? So, you can only flush toilet paper, peas, food, down the lid. We call that 3 Ps. Paper, peas, food. So anything you flush, that's but 3 Ps. Some of you already know this stuff, but there are a few that leave us all down. How do I know? Me and my mates are fighting all sorts of bad crap blocking our soil. Make sure the farming commission still some people really happens. Toilet like it's a rubbish bin. Wet wipes are one of the major causes of problems in the West. We find these all the time. And when that happens, our pumps stop working, our network gets hampered, and boom, we're getting up overflows or worse, raw sewage discharging into our rivers on people's property. So stop. No more of these or these nappies, sanitary pads, tampons, cotton buds, here down our toilets. Try put them in the rubbish bin, okay? Or even better, try switching to waste-free using water. Come on, busy. Everybody's doing their bit for the environment because you don't want to be the cause of sewage backing up in the soil. Or worse, be the cause of discharging to our rivers on people's property. It just stinks for everyone. You need more help understanding the system. Contact the drain master. Check out your website. By doing your part, you can help take care of proper toilet give you some fire. So remember, think before you flush. Only flush the 3 Ps. Paper, pee, food. Because me and my mate, something to smile about. So that's our first key message. And that's quite a cool one. I really wanted to start with that as a first key message because everybody can do this. Everybody can attempt at only flushing these things down our wharepaku. Some of our key messages like the rainwater and sewage don't mix, and the get to know your gully trap ones. Oh, okay. Our inflow and infiltration, and really trying to use members of our own community to tell the story and help them understand why these discharges happen and how they can be part of the solution to reduce the times that we have to do that. On top of the 5-part mini-series, we're also going to be running a drain art competition. And not only do they look cool like this, but we're also going to be, it's mostly around awareness of our stormwater system and our sewage system. So they've run this competition throughout the world in many different cities. Basically, we have 6 schools and they do an internal competition. The winner of each school gets a storm water drain around the city, and they win a cash prize as well. And they have to write like a little blurb about what they've learned about the stormwater and wastewater networks. And we have already secured the locations with Tairāwhiti roads, and one of them actually is going to be right out there on the corner by where the farmers market is on a Saturday morning. There's one at the bottom of Kairi Hill, but so that will be running next month, hopefully. On top of that, also, we've got good news stories just to publicise a little bit more about public drains on private properties and really talk to people that have been positively affected by the work that we've done and really get those key messages out there. And yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mihiata. So the DrainWise team has quite a few different skills now. So we've got Hemi here who's been helping us with these aspects. We've got Kerry White helping us with some policy aspects. And in the back, you see those 2 guys sitting in the back, Josh and Mark, and they are our guys on the ground who are interacting with the people, developing those relationships and finding all those inflow issues. So everyone's really pulled together and is doing well. Looking at the public pipes and private property project, that's the capital work that's in the long-term plan. We are trying to identify areas where we know there's on-property flooding, where that water can contribute to inflow into the network, and where we recognize that maybe we need to have a public solution, a council solution, as opposed to a private solution, or the private solution can't solve the bigger issues. So on that map, we've got various areas highlighted. The green, those are areas where we've already implemented public pipes on private properties. So this last financial year, we have constructed, well, we've extended our network to put pipes into areas which are experiencing problems. The orange areas are areas where we have agreements in place with homeowners to be able to put the pipes in, because obviously we have to ask for permission, put those pipes in, and it's a process. So those are slightly back in terms of the process. The red areas are areas where we've developed concepts which we still need to present to homeowners and hopefully get their agreement. And then the yellow dots are areas where there was the potential that we could still construct this financial year. But as it happens, we've already spent our budget for this financial year, so we actually can't construct those this financial year. And the intention this year was to identify lots of these areas. So next financial year, so this coming June, we can start hopefully implementing next year's ones right from the start. So you can see we covered quite a big area, and hopefully once we've dealt with that area and that area is sorted, we've investigated everything we need to in those areas, and we can look at new areas. That is one of the projects we have done, and this is Matthews Road, and there's some photos of the construction happening and the team on site. Once it's underground, you can't actually really see what's there, but there's some quite big infrastructure in the ground. Here you can see a bit more detail. This is now in Peroni Road, where we've put in another system, and it just gives indication of the scale of earthworks has to take place in some cases. And here we are in Tureni Street, which is probably a week away from being completed. So we'll have a fourth one that is definitely completed this year. Yeah, so lots of work going on there, and bringing to the end of our update on that. We won't be providing an update on this every WMC meeting, but as things develop, we'd like to keep you informed, and we will let you know how it's going, as this is a wastewater issue that affects our community. Thank you very much.
Well, given that we've been doing this for many, many years, do you see an end to the work? In timeline, should I say?
What?
Timeline.
It is an ongoing process. These are very difficult issues that councils all across New Zealand are grappling with at the moment. The good news is we've done a lot of the upfront investigative work, as well as the property inspection work, and we're really well positioned now to successfully implement the program. According to the models and our plan, if we achieve all those things, we should achieve our objective of reducing the flows from 4 times a year to once every 2 years. That's our goal. It's obviously based on some theoretical things like models, but we believe our program would be effective in doing that. Obviously, looking at the next 10 years now, but this is something that never goes away. It's not something that you ever solve. The infrastructure gets old, new people plumb their downpipes into gully traps. It'll be something that goes on forever, but we should get a good handle on it within 10 years.
Thank you for that. Thank you to the presenters and workforce at the back there. Questions?
Sorry. Yes, thanks, Chair. Just write a reply. I thought I was dealing with Neville. I didn't realise that when you're blown out of the water
I wondered when you started out. You were going.
No, respect to the program in that, and I'm just mindful of the bits we really are concerned with here, and what you have measured. You have mentioned one. How do we measure? Unfortunately, we're only under our terms of reference to measure the number of educational programs we have around this, as opposed to whether we can measure the actual reduction in outflows. Be it that some years are wet and some years aren't wet. And then the other one is our other terms of reference was, what are we doing about what educational awareness programs are we running to reduce industrial industrial volumes going into Melbourne Waste Pipe as well. Thank you, Chair.
So through the chair, the Drainwise program's absolutely looking at the domestic line. The big push for industry comes partly through the freshwater plan, where we start to have teeth around us being able to look at the amount of water that industry are using. So we have a demand management strategy that we need to put in place for all of the reticulated system within Tairāwhiti. And part of that is going to be working with our industry around the water that goes in and the water that comes out with them, and making sure that we're reducing those amounts as we go forward with that. Part of the work that we're doing is developing up a series of different things that are kind of running in parallel, but some trains had to leave the station first. This was the most important one because it's going to have the biggest benefit we see. It is one of those frustrating ones of people say when it will be fixed, and Neville and I have had a few discussions about this, and we honestly do think the measure will be that we'll notice that we haven't opened the scours for a number of years, and that's when we'll know that we've been successful, and unfortunately we'll find that by accident rather than knowing a hard date that will achieve that. The other part of work that runs alongside this, of course, is we have to have a resource consent submitted for wastewater overflows as part of the freshwater plan going forward. So as part of that, we're working with industry to remove their water from that, so that when we put in that resource consent, we have the least amount of water going into the network as possible. So that work has started. We've had to start from the environmental assessment of effects first, and then working our way back up the pipeline to making sure that we're reducing people. So those work programs are underway, but they are 2 to 3 year work programs for us to be able to get those, and we'll be reporting those back through the committee as we develop those up in the coming years.
Yeah, no, congratulations for the presentation. Absolutely awesome. That'll be a really good educational program for the community, and it's just so user friendly. It's fantastic. But my question is that obviously we've identified the Kaiti area and Tamarau area as the key contributor to this stage. But what other areas would you be moving to that have kind of like being identified as one of as the next high profile areas?
Through the chair, we have produced models for the whole city, and those are giving us an outline of where we have priorities and not. So like you've noted, Kaiti is top priority. From here, we'll be moving to Whatopeko and Elgin. And we'll just keep progressing until we've gone from the high all the way down to the low. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put that to the table. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary carried. Don't have any matters of general business. Raise that.
Oh, kia ora, through the chair. I just wanted to raise this on behalf of Tāmanu and other iwi, and I guess locals, is in regards to the new car park for the logging ships in front of Tukuru. Yeah, so we've got concerns that, there seems to be a big volume of logging ships sitting out in the bay. And just to sort of start the conversation, we were wondering what sort of systems the council has in place as far as the bio stuff, the environmental stuff, what they're reading out in the bay while they're parked up there.
I'll defer to the experts over here.
Yeah, so thank you.
So through the chair, we're happy to carry on those conversations, but it'll be outside this team's expertise. A lot of the rules around ships are governed by Maritime New Zealand. We have harbour master functions as a regional authority, but a lot of those things are outside of my Lifelines team, but we can have a conversation with you offline about how those are governed, but there are very strict controls and measures around what happens with those ships when they're parked up out in the bay.
Mr. Chair, through you, and Dave, do you foresee any variations to our current consent with all this work we're doing?
Through the chair, we're working as hard as we can not to have a variation to the consent. So everything is geared to work to make sure that we don't have to amend the consent is what we're working to as a team. So that's our driving force at the moment. I can't discount unforeseen things in the ground, that kind of stuff. So it's just as quickly as we can. So absolutely, we're working to make sure we don't have variation at this stage.
Mr. Chair, noting our next meeting's in September. Does that allow enough time for consideration if there are variations required?
So through the chair, our timeframe for September is, as we've said, we'll have our experts appointed and we'll be starting to get through some of the preliminary design and the scoping of that program. So we'll have a far better understanding by then of our timeframes that we'll be able to hit and making sure. We will be at the stage of knowing how long lead times are. We will be importing things from overseas, so we will know what the lead time is for that equipment as it comes in. So we'll be in a far better space by September to understand that. But it is something that we'll be constantly coming back to this committee about through that construction phase. Given the timeframes of our consent, we will be very tight against those. So if there are any unforeseen things or if something pops up, we'll be straight back to the committee to talk about our timeframes and any options that are there for that.
Just a note that September is probably our last meeting with the current committee. Is there going to be some handover kind of documentation available for the next incoming committee structure?
So through the chair, with every election, we have an incoming document for committee members that come through. Politely, it's only the elected members that will be changing at that. We have standing members who will be here regardless of an election. So it will be around how we induct any new members that are put forward for this committee. That'll be part of the induction of actually spending some time with the staff and with the committee to get them back up to speed so that no time is lost.
Yeah, I guess the point is that my first wastewater committee meeting had an 800-page agenda, and it was it wasn't really an induction unless you're talking about an induction by fire. So yeah, so a better process around updating those new committee members so they know where we are.
Ki te, na whakamoemiti ki te atua, ki a manu tonu ki runga ki a tātou katoa, te atawhai o te atua, te aroha o te karaiti, te whiwhi nā tōnotanga i te wairua tapu ake ake, ame.